Hi there, I'm Peter Flint, and in this video I'm going to go through the process of how I make my looped microcassette tapes. I've got one here. So I've been using these in my music and sampling projects for maybe the last 2 years, playing and recording them with this Sanyo talkbook. And the things that I've made with these tapes have connected with people quite a lot. People are always really interested in how I'm using them and how I'm making them, and always seem to want more of it. So I figured that I would make a video going into the process of how I actually make them, because tape looping is something that's taken off in popularity recently, especially with the full-size cassettes, and then using kind of Tascam Porta-Studio recorders and things like that. But they've really ballooned in cost over the last couple of years, and this is a really low-cost alternative. You can get these players and tapes on eBay for not a huge amount of money, and it's a really great way in to tape looping and just understanding tape and different recording formats in general. You only need a handful of tools, a couple of small screwdrivers, a craft knife, steel ruler, and some sellotape. It's just a case of doing something very fiddly and sometimes a bit frustrating. And in this video you'll see that it takes a few attempts, but eventually with a bit of trial and error and some luck, you can get something really unique that adds a whole new dimension to your sound. So here we have everything that we need all laid out, and we can get started. I started by taking the casing of the cassette apart. I've removed the label and found that this cassette's held together with screws. And not all tapes are held together this way. Some of them you just pop open by pushing a flathead screwdriver into the seam where they're connected, but this one comes apart really easily once you take out the screws. And then we can just take off the dust cover and look at our tape. Now we have to disconnect the tape from these white plastic reels. I started by cutting the tape where it connects to this uptake reel, and then there's a little pin that you have to get out, which I was able to push out with the end of my screwdriver. Then you've got to take the tape off the supply reel, and you push out this pin again. I did it with a craft knife. Be really careful if you're doing this. And then I was able to pull it out from the other side with my pair of pliers. And then I took out the reel from the roll of tape with the pliers again, with just a little effort. And then you remove the magnetic shield. Now I've got to cut a length of tape. I laid it out on the steel ruler and measured to 12.1 centimeters, which was an ambitious start. I also got a small length of Scotch tape and cut that way down to size. Then I very carefully made this splice, trying to get a clean and straight match, and trying not to get any Scotch tape overlapping with the audio tape, which would just gum things up. And now we have to reassemble the cassette with the loop in place. It quickly became obvious that this loop of tape is a bit short. I could only fit one reel back into the cassette, but that's not the end of the world. That can still work as long as it's the reel that gets driven when the player is playing. So the reel turns when I press play, which is a good sign. It means there isn't too much tension in the tape. So now that we know that, we can try recording some audio onto the tape. Okay, so this tape doesn't seem to work. If we turn the reel with a pencil, we can see that the loop isn't actually passing through the tape freely. So we're going to have to try again. This time I'm going to cut the tape a little bit longer at 12.6 centimeters. So I'm giving myself a whole extra half centimeter. I'm hoping that can give me enough room to get both reels into the cassette while still having the right balance of tension to allow the tape to pass through. And now I go through the process again, cutting the Scotch tape, drop the loop twice, cut another length of Scotch tape as if that's going to help me. And then I go about reassembling the cassette with the loop inside. This time there's plenty of space for both reels, though the tape is looking a little bit loose. Seems like 12.6 centimeters might have been an overcorrection. But once the tape is laid out properly around all of the spaces and everything, and once the magnetic shield is back in place, we can test it out again. There is an element of chaos to this process, and there's a good chance that anybody trying to do this will need to make several loops before getting one that actually works, especially when you're using these basic tools. And it's not moving again. It's another dud. So time to take a break and try again. On attempt number 3, I cut the tape to 12.5 centimeters long. This process takes a lot of patience, but I think I'm getting into the flow of it now. So attempt number 3 is another dud. For my 4th loop, I'm cutting it to 12.4 centimeters. Nothing again. For my 5th loop, I'm going to try 12.4 centimeters again. I think it was the right length, but maybe the splice needs to be cleaner. So this loop doesn't sound like any of the other loops I've ever made. It's really wobbly and fragile. It really doesn't hold a pitch or a volume for very long at all. It's not the kind of loop that I would use for sampling an instrument. If I wanted to record an instrument onto this and sample it and use that in my music, I would maybe want to try and make another loop that was a bit more stable. But this one sounds really unique out of all of the loops that I have, and I'm gonna keep hold of it and find some use for it. And there you have it. That's how I made this tape loop. I'm excited to start using it in my music, and I'm excited that I've got to share the process with you. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.